And so we develop patterns of behavior, which become neural pathways, actually patterns in our brain for how to react to different kinds of situations.
As you start having these voices, you learn how to live with them. And I specifically remember sometimes it's good, it saves your life.
A few simple disciplines a day can change how people see and hear you. So this is what we're going to hear from our guest, Melissa O'Mara. She embodies this perfect blend of leadership quality. She helps her leaders recognize their inner critics, gains control, and helps them find their calm and centered focus, as I mentioned earlier. With her guidance, I learned to identify the voices in my head that limit my well-being and success. And I've discovered techniques to retrain my brain for healthier patterns of thinking and reacting. Her expertise in mental fitness, based on the Positive Intelligence program by Shirzad Chamine, has been transformative for two of our audience members, Marite Ball and Leslie Lawton, who are joining us later to share how it has changed the way they do business, respond in tough situations, and more. Tonight, Melissa will share insights and practical tips on how you too can cultivate these essential skills. So let's dive right into tonight's episode and explore the many facets of leadership with the amazing Melissa O'Mara.
Oh boy, now I have to say my saboteurs got a little activated, like, my inner critic, because you say all these good things about me. And I thought, oh my goodness, sometimes I am not all of that. And that I think is sage discernment, not really necessarily an inner critic. But thank you very much,
So those
Siobhan.
voices in my head, Melissa, those
Yeah.
voices in my head, where do they come from? And help me understand them.
Yeah. So, well, I think most of us, I mean, I'd love to see a show of hands. Does anybody not have voices in your head other than your main voice? Does anybody not have multiple voices that sort of chat at each other and chat at you and maybe more than chat? Yeah. So I think that idea of having voices in our head, almost everybody can relate to that concept. And, they're called different things: saboteurs, inner critics. um there's lots of modalities that try to, actually there's movies about about the voices in our head. There's a Disney movie, now I'm trying to remember the name of it, somebody will give it to me, that's all about joy and sadness and all these different voices in our heads. So but you asked a specific question: where do these voices come from? These voices are actually um, uh, voices of what would have been coping mechanisms when we were very young. When we come out of the womb, we come out and we face circumstances, birth order, what's going on in our household, what's going on with our parents, our siblings, etc. And all we know is that we need basics. We need to be loved and fed and cared for. And so we learn immediately how to get the attention that we need and how to be cared for. And so we develop patterns of behavior, which become neural pathways, actually patterns in our brain for how to react to different kinds of situations. And in fact, in the early years, this is how we develop some of our core characteristics, some of our core strengths. So, I mean, the voices in our heads, or these patterns of behavior, the thought and behavior, develop usually in a way, just a very natural way to cope with whatever's going on. Sometimes there's really hard things going on. And in Shirzad's life, the founder of this program, he had a very harsh father. And so he has a very harsh inner critic he calls the judge. And he went on a sort of a quest through multiple sets of degrees and PhDs to try to figure out what was going on in his own head, and to figure out how to calm these negative voices that he heard, mostly very negative voices. So yeah, they really develop out of basic coping mechanisms when we're usually quite young.
So Dr. Roni is with us, so
Oh,
let's
great.
get her on here. And Gabriela, do you have those voices in your head? That inner critic?
Oh, are you asking me if I have voices in my head?
I am.
have voices in my head all the time, and those voices sometimes control my day. And I have the opportunity to listen to certain voices and ignore some. As you start having these voices, you learn how to live with them. And I specifically remember sometimes it's good, it saves your life. Not kidding. I had a voice in my head one day that says, "Stop what you're doing and call your son." And I did. And man, was I glad that I did, because he had went over the cliff on the highway. And the next call was a highway trooper, telling me that he had my son and that he was okay, but we couldn't get to him. And he said, did your son call you? I go, no, but I knew to call my son at that particular time. And when I called him, the voices that was coming from his car, I knew that voice said, call your son at that particular time. Because if I hadn't called him at that particular time, who knows what he would have done? He would have opened the door. He would have gotten out. He could have gotten hurt. Many things could have happened. It's not a bad thing. A lot of people are afraid of the voices in their head.
When you first said that, the voices in your head can save your life, I thought of that you were going to talk about the, fight, flight, freeze response, the times in your life where you do need to move into fight, flight, freeze. And the reactive part of our brain shifts into gear, which is, this is the instinctive part of our brains that developed many, many eons ago, right? When there actually were cave lions and bears and tigers, et cetera. But what you're talking to, I think, is something way different. And I would equate that what you're talking to certainly to a higher order of a voice that is sage or beyond. And by beyond, I guess I feel like when we're really in our clear, calm center, and then we can become a channel for what needs to come through. And I've heard so many stories like yours, and so I'm pretty sure I've heard one from Marite, who is going to come on later and talk a little bit about her experience with PQ and the sage perspective. But hey, did everything end out okay? I mean, I guess we want to hear the end of the story.
It worked out. It worked out marvelous, and I referred that to a lot because I know I get feelings like that a lot. I've achieved great things in life because of the voices that I get sometimes.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. I don't know a lot about sage or what you're talking about, but I just know what I experienced. And I'm so happy to have you on because now I can understand it even better what's going on when I hear them, when I feel them.
Yeah.
I resonate at a high frequency. I know that. And when I was younger, I used to be afraid of it. I'm no longer afraid of it.
And you said which voices to ignore too. So are there some lower frequency voices that show up,
Absolutely.
Roni? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think those are the saboteur voices that we're going to talk a little bit more about as well. It's a
Okay,
great
I'm
way to think of
excited.
it, lower frequency voices.
Yeah.
Gabriela, do you have that inner critic that comes out?
Oh, yes. I mean, definitely. I struggle with it like I'm sure most people do every day. And you just have to, I'm one of those people that I always look at it on the positive. Okay. I keep myself busy too. But occasionally, yes, I let sometimes the worry, the anxiety that comes in me of something that is probably a problem, mainly problem. This is happening in your life. But I quickly dismiss it and I try to think positive. I try to just not let that get me down. And, the older we get, the more of those voices, they kind of give you that anxiety. Obviously, once you get married, have kids, now your kids are part of that anxiety. And the older they get, like I always pray when I hear my son drive away to go to work. I'm like, oh, please protect him, because I know he's a little bit of a lead foot. So please protect him. And of course that voice comes, but I don't allow that to get the best of me. And I try to be positive, and that works for me.
So what you're talking about in the vernacular of this particular methodology, it's a framework, and all frameworks are flawed and some are useful. This is a very useful framework that Shirzad Chamine created and wrote a book called Positive Intelligence, which is out there that anybody can grab and read. What you're talking about is the concept of mental fitness that's outlined in that book, is the ability to stay in a positive mindset up to 70 or more % of the time. So we're all gonna sort of go into saboteur mindset. We're going to get triggered. We're going to get reactive. The question is, how long do we allow ourselves to stay in that state? And how quickly can we shift gears back? And how do you do that? And so there was a lot of primary research that was done by Shirzad in order to come up with this framework, because he was dealing with his own very negative voices in his head. And he talks about 3 muscles, which I think you might relate to with different methodologies or frameworks. One of them is self-command, and that's the ability to shift focus or command your mind to focus on something specific. It allows you to shift from reactive brain over to maybe getting back inside of your body, focusing on your breathing, so that at the moment you get triggered, if you choose, you can practice self-command and choose to shift. The first muscle, though, that has to be activated is the saboteur identification. So you have to know that the voice that's coming in is as Roni said, Dr. Roni said, a lower vibration. It's a negative voice. It's a voice that's, is not going to serve you. And as soon as you can identify, oh, I'm going down, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. I don't want to go there because I've done this before. You identify that negative voice. And so there's 9 types of saboteurs that have been identified. And the cool thing is you can take a free saboteur assessment to figure out what are your top saboteur voices, the ones that really pull you off course. So we're going to put the link out there in the chat so people can do that free saboteur assessment and get a list of the ranking of these 9 saboteurs. And you're going to be interested in knowing about what your top 2 or 3 or 4 are. But there are things like the stickler, and the stickler has this high bar for perfection and order and structure, and sort of a perfectionist, right? And at their best, they are wonderful at creating order and structure out of chaos, and doing things really well to a high standard. And at their worst, they beat themselves up for not achieving their own high bar, and they come across as incredibly critical of others as well. And so it's one of those things that we know about. Our greatest strengths can also become our greatest weaknesses or saboteurs.
We have a specific technique that we can use.
Yes.
For the self-command you're talking.
We do. We have, and there's some free videos out on that Positive Intelligence website that you can go to learn about self-command. But I'm happy to lead a little demonstration. Would you guys like that?
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. So you might want to think of something that happened to you in the last day or two that really triggered you, like really just like pushed your buttons and you kind of went, for a moment.
That's today.
What?
The last few days, that happened today.
That happened today. Okay, so you got something. So remember, sort of get into that state a little bit if you can, go ahead and allow your mind to start to swirl on the self-talk that was going on or the state you found yourself in. Just for 10 seconds, get yourself back there. And I know of one that happened with me and my significant other who happens to be on the phone. So I can identify with this. It's only 70%, you can be in PQ, all that positive intelligence and mental fitness. So now what I want you to do is go ahead and put 2 feet on the ground. Take a deep breath. Eyes open. Eyes can be open. And I want you to rub together your thumb and your forefinger with enough tension that you can actually feel the ridges or the texture of your skin. And just go ahead and feel that, the texture. Rub those fingers together. And then you might switch to another finger and see if that's the same or different. Maybe notice the temperature and the texture. Then go ahead and with one set of fingers, just go ahead and feel your fingers and touch your palm of your hand and notice the lines and the temperature, the texture, and just the overall feeling of that, of touch. And notice that you're still breathing. And notice that you could actually be doing that under the table and nobody would know. And do you feel different already?
Yeah, it's like my focus went to what I was feeling, I guess, on my hands, and comforting, I think, in a way.
So the cool thing is that what the positive intelligent self-command muscle teaches you are many techniques, sensory techniques that help us get back into our body and pay attention, focus on one particular thing. So that was sensing, primarily sensing, right? I did have us put our feet on the floor. That's physical, but it's getting us back into our body and then going with a physical or tactile PQ reps of the fingers and the hands. And now what we can do just for a moment is I'm going to have you be silent. I want you to listen to the furthest away sound that you can hear, as well as any ambient sounds that you maybe didn't notice before. And then just notice the closest in sound that you can hear. And maybe it's the sound of your own breath or your heartbeat. So this is using your, this is a auditory PQ rep, and you can also do visual PQ reps. You can do visual PQ reps where you focus on a specific object. So find an object, notice the color, the levels of saturation of the color, the texture, the shape, the variations, and then maybe zoom back out to a soft focus and notice your breath. Now turn your focus to the people on the screen and just see if you can see other people's eyes. So you can be on a Zoom call or a Teams call or in a meeting, and you can do visual PQs to get yourself present and out of fight, flight, freeze, or, scatterbrain, monkey mind, by simply choosing to focus on other people's eyes. And if you're meeting with one person, you can look right at their forehead, or you can choose to be really present when you're triggered in order to bring yourself back to center and back to present. So these are very simple techniques that you can use today, tomorrow, anytime to bring yourself back. And it's called self-command. That's the self-command muscle. And you have to first catch yourself in order to, you got to catch. It's like lengthening the pause long enough to know, what am I going to do now? I'm going to choose. Am I going to choose to come back to center and be present? Or I'm going to let the saboteur win? So another great analogy is when you get triggered, and some triggers are way easier to catch than others, because they're maybe a hot flash of anger or fear or, reactivity of some sort that's really obvious. So the metaphor for those are like you put your hand on a hot stove. What do? Do you keep it there? No, you pull it right off immediately. So our physical body knows to move. The pain's useful because it makes us know, there's something hot there that's dangerous. But then we pull our hand away. We remove the pain. We need to do the same thing when we're having negative thoughts that are potentially painful, that are going to take us down a rabbit hole or a road that we know will put us in actually a much less functional mindset. So it moves us into the reactive part of our brain, fight, flight, freeze. Our cognitive senses are lessened. Our physical abilities are strengthened because of the impulse to run or fight. But in most of the kinds of things that we face these days, we actually need our cognitive mind more. So maybe we are in the middle of a difficult conversation and somebody says a remark that just triggers us and pushes our buttons. The best way to respond is from this cognitive, grounded, centered, whole place, head, heart, gut, aligned, right? So how do you get back to that after you've been triggered by that comment? This is what, I would start with PQ reps under the table. I'd take a deep breath. Yeah. So yeah, I'm curious what y'all are thinking, because this is the first time you've ever encountered this particular idea, I think. So I'd love to hear what you're thinking about it, or questions that you might have.
It all depends
So-
too on who triggered us. Could be a coworker. We're more tolerant of that versus, let's say, your husband or your children. But we still need to practice the same courtesy to our husband and our children.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. My question is that what is, when you're having that feeling, right? Whether it's fear or anger or outbursts, I like the texture of the feeling of my hands. You never do that. And immediately I was relaxed doing that, right? So in the moment, when you're having that reaction or fear or whatever emotion that you're having, what is the one thing that you can do that will release that feeling? Because we know it's just the feeling in the moment.
Yeah.
But so what is the thing that you can do to let that feeling go? I mean, not that you completely ignore it, because you might have to deal with it later, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the moment, you have to keep working with the patient, or you have to keep doing what you're doing, but you don't want to feel that feeling.
So the first step is, so I kind of joke and say it's stop, drop, and roll, but it's not that simple. It's intercept the negative feeling or emotion, because sometimes we'll be 5 minutes into it before we realize we're being reactive. We might be already down the rabbit hole. That happens. Okay. So then it's more about recovery, and the step is the same. The sooner we catch it, the better, because then that cortisol hijack doesn't get so strong, because our fight, flight, freeze, releases all these stress hormones that then live in our system, sometimes for 8 or 12 hours if we really get them going. And then what you do is you decide, you learn through practice what kind of PQ reps ground and center you fastest. So for me, the first reminder is usually like I rub my fingers together. I've gotten to a point though, I almost, I might even take the deep breath first. And then depending on where I am, if I can close my eyes, I might do some deep breathing with my eyes closed. But if I'm right in the middle of it with people, then I'm going to try to use breath and or like rub my hands on my pants, but I'm going to use the more the tactile reps, or visual by looking at their faces. And the thing that I know that can begin to counteract the negativity is oxytocin. So we can smile. We can find a way. We can picture that person with, if you know the person, you care deeply about them, a child, you know, a spouse, a significant other. If you could almost picture them as a child, you know, in their most pure and innocent state, and just remember that they deserve compassion and love, and they're just as human as you, right? And have compassion for yourself for getting triggered, compassion for them for you know, whatever is going on with them. It can help a lot to picture them as a child. And that's what I'm kind of leaning into, or the third muscle is moving into sage mode. And there are 5 sage powers. Explore, so being super curious, being curious about, oh wow, why did I have such a strong reaction? Or why did they react in that way? Or wow, you know, like really be like a fascinated anthropologist, just curious
Mhm.
about the human being over there and the human being over here too, right? So curiosity number one, and the explore muscle. And then the second muscle is empathy, and that childhood picture of yourself as somebody that deserves compassion. There's a big exercise we do. We have a whole, you know, one of the weekly, you know, there's a 6-week program. And in that 6-week program, one of the weeks is really around empathy. And empathy, we use that childhood picture to find our innermost pure essence before the world caked all of its expectations on us and we started to mask up and all, you know, and you know, cover up our Buddha.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's another one. And then there's also innovate and navigate, which is really connecting with our wiser elder self, what's really important in the long, 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 long run. And then finally activate with clarity and centered, you know, power.
Well, I know one thing. I think that for me, it depends on personalities. I really like the one about empathize and looking at them as a child, and just really having compassion in the worst situation possible. I'm good at doing that. And I feel that sometimes a lot of people have fear around doing that because they're so angry that that person is latching out. But when you smile and you just empathize and feel that passion for them, and even if you can't look at them, if you turn around, you just feel this release that goes through your entire body. Um, and I don't think for activation, that's hard. I don't know. You can explain that a little bit more, but that that one for me is a little hard, because that I feel like I have to have an action for what they've just done, and I mean I have the appropriate action depending on what it is. I mean I live in a very complicated world of a healer, so
Yeah, activate could just be holding your ground with calm and clarity in that moment, and holding the space for them to be who they have to be in this moment. That could be activate.
Let's bring on Marite and Leslie. Marite Ball and Leslie Lawton are clients of Melissa's, so I want to see everybody on here. Melissa, Marite, Leslie, Dr. Roni, and Gabriela. If we have room for everybody, let's do that. And Melissa, I'm going to let you interview Marite and Leslie
Sure.
to bring out the information that you want our audience to know.
Well, I think that they each have their own story, and so I guess first of all, I'll say that I've been doing coaching, executive coaching, team coaching, leadership, you know, collective leadership kind of stuff for decades. I think I got started around 2002, and started my own business in 2014. And I only discovered this positive intelligence approach a year ago, actually. And I knew immediately because it had an impact on me, and that it fit the pattern of so many other models and modalities that I like, leadership and self-deception and change your questions, change your life. There's so many, different modalities that mapped to it, but it gave me something that I could do, PQ reps, rubbing your two fingers together, having a practice. So going from the knowing to the doing something proactively to shift our way of being. So that's literally what this program enables you to do, this sort of modality. It's about practice, and it's about the ability to shift quickly in the moment from a reactive saboteur, less resourced place into a much more grounded, centered, and clear place from which we can be with others, be with ourselves, and act. And so I would just love to hear, Marite, maybe start with Marite. What have you discovered? Maybe talk about your top couple of saboteurs even, and what you've learned about your judge and saboteur. And I mean, it's a journey, right? I mean, for all of us, it's a journey. There's I'm not black belt sage yet, I can tell you that.
Yeah, so I joined the Changemaker collab that Melissa started. It's been almost 2 years now, because I'm about accelerating climate solutions. I come from a corporate background, and we have the solutions that's just not being deployed. So that's why I changed the Changemaker collab, because I know mindset is very important. And Melissa recommended the PQ program, and it made perfect sense. So when I was a junior, a corporate person, I had a challenge with emotional intelligence, as I was told. I was just too driven. I cared about people, but it was too much. And I was told, you need to be more emotionally intelligent. And positive intelligence is the essence of emotional intelligence. And I'm a very practical person. I like to activate things. So this gives me the tool to self-improve, and also have the tools to help teams work better together, and with really empathy, which I needed to grow for everybody. So one of my main saboteur is also the avoider, because I love peace. I don't like conflict. I believe everybody can get along. And so I would retreat from that. So and procrastination is a part of avoider. So that gives me tools. So there's an app, and I'm very practical. And it's that you get the 6 weeks, and then every day you can work on something. I choose the surprise me method. And every day you get 2 minutes tidbits, and you focus on something. So it could be empathy, it could be innovate, explore. Today it's about focus on the 10% that the other person has right. Because in any conflict, we're not 100% right. So it gives me the tools. It's so practical. So I'm very grateful. I'm gung-ho, to the point I told my daughter, who is in corporate world, very high job, very high stress, very smart. She's a hyperachiever. I recommended it to her because she was a little too stressed out in her own way, and she's doing it now. And I'm telling all my friends, I'm saying, boy, you can find your peace. You can be much more efficient, make a bigger impact if you know your own saboteur, and judge is number one. Stop judging yourself. Stop judging others. Stop judging circumstances. Pause and work from your stage perspective that we all have. So I'm, as you can tell, gung-ho, and I think I'll do that for life. That app is awesome.
Thanks, Marite. Yes, and it's wonderful to work with your daughter too. And
So Leslie,
Leslie, your story's a little bit different. I mean,
Always. First of all, I've also been working with Melissa for about a little more than the last year and a half, close to 2 years myself. And she literally discovered and introduced positive intelligence during that time. It's been over a year. And I'm a kind of what you might, a free thinker. And it's like, I resist programs and things that people get all excited about. Sort of an anti-true believer. And so however, I really been the last 3 years have been incredibly, I've been through a lot of life changes in the last 3 years, and got to the point where I was experiencing extreme anxiety and depression, this just lovely combination of anxiety and depression. And I was into the work with Melissa by that time, positive intelligence work and identifying my saboteurs. My main saboteur was the pleaser. But I retook the test about a month ago, and I've shifted into stickler as my main saboteur. And which is, being a stickler is kind of nice. You can just make sure everything's working and keep things kind of going forward in the right way, so to speak. But I was calling my saboteurs my annihilators. It was so, I mean, the things that were coming to me from my 7-year-old self it was just kind of terrifying, the emotions that were coming up and the physiological responses I was having. And over really, I would say, just doing the work in a rather automatic fashion, using the app on my phone, doing the practices through the day, not trying too hard. I was just letting it work me in a sense. And I would say over the last few months, I've been able to slip into sage pretty easily. And I can catch myself judging somebody or judging something and then, whoop, and I can just stop. I can say, wait a minute, stop, that's judging. Or I don't even say the words internally. I just sort of happens. So it's been great learning for me, and almost easy in a way to just do it, put your feet on the floor and do the work. Put your feet on the floor, be in the room. And so that's the way I've been approaching this work. And I've been having dreams like mad. I had a dream, what I call a stress dream this morning. And I had flown to someplace like Tucson, and I was being flown by a company to learn about doing some work for them. And somehow everybody else understood what the work was about, how much the pay was, and all of that. And I did not have the sheet of paper I needed in this dream. I was so happy when I woke up because, oh my gosh, that was not happening. But the feelings stayed with me. And I do find that morning, you're really almost at the mercy of your saboteurs in the morning. And so that's where I'll program myself at night, and so in the morning is the time I can be the most vulnerable. So I'm really pulling in my sage, my higher self, what Melissa once described as the deepest, most loving, most beautiful part of yourself, the part that really loves you. So I'd say the work is kind of almost miraculous in the way it works you. Okay. And Melissa's just been an awesome teacher and presence in my life.
What I want to just underline is put your feet on the floor and do the work. This is a practice. And if we just intellectually learn about a thing and we understand it in our heads, but we don't find a way to integrate it into our routine and into and really rewire our brain by catching ourselves before we go down the old neural pathway, and then bravely paving a new one through quite a bit of effort. I mean, there is effort in more effort in the beginning for sure, because you're really creating a new way of responding to an old pattern. And I just want to speak to what Dr. Roni, I think, said at the very beginning, how sometimes it's the people we love the most that we spend the most time with, maybe a spouse or a child that I think it was Dr. Roni, it might have been Gabrielle. I can't remember, but one of you said this, and yes, because those patterns are even more ingrained. They're more repetitive. And so they're going to be harder to step out of. It's harder to get out of a sort of, think of how our brain has these ruts, you know, these neural pathways to get out of the old pattern is challenging. You can't really change it, but you can create a new one. And so that's what, you know, you're going to be trying to do if you take this on. And really all the knowledge you need is in the book. And how to practice is in the book. So you could possibly do it, you know, with the knowledge that's in the book and some of the free stuff on the website. And then there's also the 6-week boot camp, mental fitness program, which, you know, I highly recommend, but you know, it's, and you can find a coach on their website that is certified, that runs these programs. And by the way, they have all kinds of different, you know, specialties. Some of the coaches focus on ADHD, some focus on fitness, physical fitness, all of that. And the author of the book is Shirzad, Shirzad, Chamine, Shamine, and it's positive intelligence. And you can go to positiveintelligence.com. And you can also, for sure, reach out to me. I know that you've got a LinkedIn link, and I can also point you. I think in the fall is my next open enrollment program. I do this work inside of organizations. That's where kind of the bread and the butter is, working with teams inside of organizations, because this really is about, of course, we're going to feel better, but it also improves our performance, our mental health. And of course, mental health is a big issue inside of organizations today. And it really improves our relationships. And you know how it is, you know, you're in a team, not everybody sees things the same way. There tends to be a fair amount of tension and conflict. How do you embrace that tension? How do you embrace each other's differences? In a way, this is another way of looking at diversity. A diversity of the way that we think and the way that we react.
Roni, is there a health aspect to this, a nutritional aspect? Can
Oh,
you see
yeah.
the connection?
Well, the health aspect is, I think, probably I'll ask Dr. Roni to answer that, but what does stress do to our bodies? I mean, the stress hormones that rage in our bodies that can lead to depression, which, it's fundamental, I think, to physical well-being, emotional well-being.
And the people that need you the most, the group of people that need you the most are the healers, because they're dealing with the excess cortisol, adrenaline, and all of those hormones all day. I mean, if they're doing the type of healing work where you're dealing with sick people and you're dealing with serious whole body diseases, so what comes with a physical illness also comes their emotional illness.
Yes.
And so you have to deal with all of them, right? All three of the body, mind, and spirit. So by the end of the day, you're kind of wiped. So these healers need to be able to learn what you're saying, because at the end of the day, they feel empty. And when you're dealing with a person that's empty, they can't possibly continue the work long term. So thank you. I mean, this is amazing. Just the short time that I've been here with you, I feel your energy, your frequency, and I do know that so many people need you.
Thank you so much. Oh,
So
yeah, the
thank
movie
you.
called Inside Out. Thank you, Claudia, in the chat. I knew we would crowdsource that movie. You've got to watch that. It's such a fun little, flick. All the voices in our heads, but kind of to what you said, Dr. Roni, yes, the healers need this. For sure. And a concept is that two different aspects. One is we build muscle over time. So why it's called mental fitness is we go to the PQ, or the positive intelligence quotient gym. So we build muscle over time by repetition. And we actually grow sort of a muscle number in the app if you end up going on board and using the app. But the other thing throughout the day is you've got to keep your battery charged. So if you're doing all of your PQ reps in the morning, or all of your, you know, inner grounding and getting all prepped for the day, but then it depletes all day long. So the idea with this modality is that you need to rebuild your PQ battery, recharge it throughout the day. And that's why
Mhm.
a lot of this is about catching yourself during the day when you're starting to come down, and just doing 3 minutes or 5 minutes of PQ reps before your next meeting, before a difficult conversation, or to recover afterwards.
And I just want to bring Jillian, our creator, Jillian Murray, in to say her thanks.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Okay. This is great. I'm all about leadership and coming from a corporate world. And actually, this one of the things I used to teach Melissa back in my day was I used to do leadership training for youth with the Air Cadet program, and my husband and I used to do teach leadership about responsibility and leading from behind and coaching others and being that example. So everything I listened to today were just resonated to me, and how I want to show up every day. When I show up in the morning, is I need to be putting on that positive face and, be that I need it for myself so I can help others see the lights of what can happen. So regardless of what may have happened yesterday, whatever may have pulled me back down below from the years and trials and tribulations I've gone through with my children, my family, my circumstances, my injuries and corporate toxicity that I've had in my life, I needed to have something to look forward to. So this is one of the reasons why we created this world of Feel Good, Share Good, was to allow people a place to have a community where love and belonging, where we can show up, give some positive energy, share a good story. I don't care what story it is, but if it made you smile, share it. If it's something that's going to help somebody feel good, share it. But it's about how we show up to be that example for others. As a leader, you have to be that example. And we sometimes though need to have a community of those around us. So you are, the average of the 5 people you surround yourself. Well, I want to be the average of 1,000, 1,000,000 people that are all good. And if we can bring a venue or bring a platform where people like yourself who have inspired others to be the best that they can be, then I would like to see this pay it forward and do more of this. So thank you for Dr. Roni for always being here every Monday night. Thank you for Siobhan for taking over the realms and, taking off that, the extra workload off my shoulders, where I'm giving you somewhere that I know you can shine. Thank you for Gabriela for being just a beautiful, kind-hearted soul that you are. And Claudia, who had to step off, but we have such an amazing group of people within our community that we need to sort of celebrate each other. And I just took away some little tips that help me, because I know it can go backwards sometimes, and I sometimes need to feed off the energy of my peers. And if I know if my tribe is huge, altogether we have more energy. So, but I thank you for this tonight, Melissa. Thank you for sharing your testimony with Leslie and Marita and all the people that are coming into the lives. But those, I know there's many of you watching this on Facebook today, and there's going to be many, many more watching the YouTubes. Please share and like our channel. Please follow our guest speakers. Give those feedback, because we just want to make the show do some good. Thank you, everybody. Okay.
And just one last word from our guest, our special guest, Melissa O'Mara. Let's what do you have to leave the audience with today?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is take care of yourself throughout the day and remember that you too have a battery just like your cell phone, a mental fitness battery, and you need to recharge throughout the day. So give yourself a few moments to breathe, to, do your form of self-care to get grounded and centered before you go on to the next thing. Don't let your monkeys rule your mind. um, Find your inner sage and let him or her lead the day 70% of the time.
We're going to check in with you again, maybe in another 6 months, have you back on and see who's been in their sage mind and who has stayed with the flying monkeys. So I want to thank you so much, Melissa, for joining us tonight. And I want a special thanks to Marite Ball and Leslie Lawton for sharing their testimonials about the PQ reps and how it's changed their life. And to my co-hosts, Dr. Roni and Gabrielle Daughtrey, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we'll see you next time. And remember, when you feel good, you share good, and you ultimately do good. Thanks for joining, everyone.